Good evening and welcome to the Braddock District Community Conversation on Active Transportation as part of the ActiveFairfax Transportation Plan. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and the recording has now been turned on. My name is Nicole Winans. I'm with the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. I'm the project manager for the ActiveFairfax Transportation Plan and an active transportation planner with the county. I'm joined here by Supervisor Walkinshaw, welcome, and I give you a chance to say a few words in a minute. Tom Bishotny, the Director of the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. We also have Chris Wells, who is the Program Manager for the Active Transportation Program at the Fairfax County Department of Transportation, as well as Lauren Delmar, who is an Active Transportation Engineer and the Pedestrian Program Manager for the Fairfax County Department of Transportation. And we're also joined by Sally Kirilov, who is with Supervisor Walkinshaw's office. So before we get started, I would like to ask Supervisor Walkinshaw, who would like to say a few words.
Thanks, Nicole. I'll be very brief. Excited to be here. Very excited about the ActiveFairfax Transportation Plan, and this is an opportunity for the community to weigh in and share their perspective and their needs, especially in areas around the Braddock District where you think we can make pedestrian and bicycle improvements. This is a significant priority for Fairfax County. We have had one of the tragedies of the pandemic across the country is that pedestrian deaths actually increased. And over the last decade across the country, pedestrian deaths are up 46%, whereas traffic deaths, in-car deaths, are only up 5%. So it's gotten safer to be inside a car, but unfortunately less safe across the country to be walking. And that's what we want to avoid here in Fairfax County. So this is a quality of life issue, improving pedestrian and bicycle facilities, but it's a life and death issue also. So the work that we're doing here tonight as a community is really important. So Nicole, thank you. Tom Bishotny, thank you. And let's get started.
Thank you, Supervisor. The agenda for this meeting today is on the screen here. So we will start going over some of the logistics on how this meeting is going to work since we're working with a virtual setting. When we started this project, we were hoping to meet in person and have these face-to-face conversations about these important topics. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, we had to move this meeting online. So we will go over how you can chime in today and ask questions and join the discussion. Then we will cover some of the backstory. This is an active transportation planning project. So what is active transportation and what are the type of facilities we can plan for active transportation users? And we will go over the projects, nuts and bolts, and the next steps that's coming up in the future. And then at the end, we will have an open Q&A and discussion. So first about the meeting logistics. Again, this meeting is being recorded. If you just joined, the recording will be available on the project website, which can be found at fairfaxcounty.gov/transportation/bike-walk/ActiveFairfax. If you would like to ask a question during the meeting, you may use the WebEx Q&A feature, which is can be found at the bottom right. It's labeled Q&A, and you can type in your question anytime. And then when we get to the question and answer sections, we will read the question aloud. If you would like to answer a question we're asking you, you can do so using the WebEx chat feature, which is also at the bottom right. And we will switch out the Q&A and chat so it's not too confusing for you. The benefit of the chat is that you can actually see each other's responses, and please make sure that you send your chat to all attendees, not just the panelists. But the best way to participate today is verbally, to speak up. You are welcome to raise your hand if you would like to speak. And because you will be muted and you will need to be unmuted by Lauren. So you can raise your hand. There's a little raise your hand button, a little hand at the bottom of your screen to the right. You can click that. And after you're done asking your question or sharing your thoughts, you can press it again and basically lower your hand so we know that you don't have another question. We have a few call-in users today. If you're calling in, you can raise your hand by pressing *3, and you can unraise your hand the same way. All right, let's get started. What is active transportation? So as part of this project, we are defining active transportation as all forms of non-motorized self-propelled travel for recreational or transportation purposes. And that can include walking, riding a bike, or riding a horse, hiking, running, or rolling, for example, in a wheelchair, on a scooter, or in a stroller. There's one exception to the non-motorized self-propelled rule, and that's electric micromobility vehicles. And those vehicles are seen as active transportation, part of active transportation because they use active transportation facilities, particularly bike lanes, but also sidewalks. And they are still more active than driving in a car. So those type of vehicles are often electric scooters. You may have seen them in Arlington and Alexandria, those electric scooters that are available for rent, but those could also be private. And we have electric bikes, both private and rentable in Fairfax County as part of Capital Bike Share, and electric skateboards and other types of similar vehicles. So what are active transportation facilities that we can plan for as part of this project? So these are broad, in 3 different categories. So we have pedestrian-focused facilities, we have bicycle-focused facilities, and then we have hiking, mountain biking, equestrian facilities. So let's look at the pedestrian facilities first. And at the end of this section, we can have a 10-minute discussion about active, what your thoughts are on active transportation when it comes to being a pedestrian in Fairfax County, as well as the specific facilities we're going to show you in a minute here. So let's start with the most basic one. So sidewalks, you're all familiar with. They're usually concrete, but they can also be a brick surface or other type of enhanced surface. And there can be wider in urban areas where there are more pedestrians, so there's a bit more room to stroll. And there in urban areas, you would also find benches and other enhancements such as street trees and pedestrian scale lighting. Then in other parts of the county, you often find more narrow sidewalks. There are not as many pedestrians, but it's a safe place to walk along the street. And the width is usually determined by the needs of people with mobility issues. So a wheelchair would be able to turn around. So that's how the width of the newer facilities are determined. Then we also have crosswalks, of course. Crossing the road to get from A to B needs to be done safely. So we have different types of crosswalks in Fairfax County. So the graphic on the left here shows the 3 most common ones. So those are usually at an intersection. What is labeled number 1 here is called a marked crosswalk, just a standard marked crosswalk with 2 parallel lines. Those are most commonly found at signalized crosswalk, signalized intersections with a pedestrian head. And then the number 2 here is an enhanced crosswalk. It's a high visibility crosswalk, or also known as a zebra crosswalk with the big bold stripes. Those are also found at intersections, particularly near schools or near the metro, where more pedestrians are to be expected. But then there's a 3rd type, which is an unmarked crosswalk. Legally, it's the same crosswalk as number 1 and 2, but it doesn't have the stripes. But motorists must still yield to pedestrians in this crosswalk and stop for pedestrians in the crosswalk. Then on the right here is something called a mid-block crosswalk. So it's not at an intersection. So a driver may not expect pedestrians crossing here. So those are usually done with the high visibility markings. There's also pedestrian signage to the left and right to draw attention. So if there's a trail crossing, for example, or a bus stop, you will see those mid-blocks. Other enhanced crosswalks that are a little bit more comfortable are on the left here, a crosswalk of the pedestrian refuge island. And that allows a pedestrian to cross one direction of travel at the time and have a safe place to wait for the next gap in traffic. On the right here is a crosswalk that's enhanced with something called a rectangular rapid flashing beacon. So it's the same pedestrian signage we saw earlier, but it has flashing lights that you can't see in the picture, but they flash really rapidly when a pedestrian pushes a button. However, this is not a signalized crossing, so the pedestrian still has to wait for a safe gap in traffic before they can cross. But particularly at night, it alerts drivers from pretty far away that there's a pedestrian either waiting to cross or already crossing, so that they can look out for pedestrians. The signalized crosswalk is very common in Fairfax County. Most intersections have at least 2 or 3. We're working on getting 4 of these at each intersection. They're push button activated in most cases, and they are providing a safe crossing, a protected crossing for pedestrians. The only conflict to be expected would be a right-turning car that has to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. But then on the right here is something new that we have only had in our toolbox for a couple of years. And I think we only have 1 in Fairfax County, but more coming. And that's a pedestrian hybrid beacon signal. So it's designed for mid-block crossing, so not at an intersection, but it does stop the cars. So the pedestrian will push the button, the signal turns red, and then they can cross safely. And then there are grade separated crossings. So here, a pedestrian bridge on the left and a pedestrian tunnel on the right. And those are best used across very busy roads, like a highway here. This is the Tor Road towards Weston, or a body of water like a river or train tracks. Also in Weston is this type of tunnel. They actually have a few of those that were planned as part of their trail network. But tunnels can also be used as a retrofit opportunity. Particularly if there's a trail that kind of passes along maybe a stream, so that the at-grade crossing is not necessary. So now we would like to hear from you what it feels like for you to walk around in Fairfax County, or if you go out for a run or a stroll. So any good or bad, we would like to hear it all from you. Or also if you have any questions about the facilities we just showed you, or any preferences you would like to share. So you can do so by placing your question or answer in the chat. Or if you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. And if you're calling in, as a reminder, please press *3 to raise your hand.
Thanks, Nicole. I have a hand raised from a phone number. The first 6 digits are 571262. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Whoop.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hello. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. This is Bob Cosgrove. I'm the Braddock District Rep on the Trails, Sidewalk, and Bikeways Committee. I'm trying to get the password so I can log in to see the virtual presentation. I am on the phone listening to Nicole, but I'd like to see what she's showing as well. Can you provide that?
There's no password necessary. If you go to our website and search for ActiveFairfax, and then find the meeting page, you can just click on the join the meeting, and there shouldn't be a password.
Okay, that worked.
Okay, great. Do we have any other questions or thoughts on the pedestrian experience in your district or in your neighborhood?
I have a hand raised from Kevin. I'm going to go ahead and unmute you now.
Just to follow up on Bob, the problem, I had the same issue. There was a password, but it was pre-populated and it was, shielded. So you couldn't tell that it had been pre-populated, and that might have confused people trying to get in. So,
Thank you for letting us know.
okay, thank you.
I'm going to go to Anne.
And you're unmuted if you would like to say something. Oh, unfortunately, we can't hear you. Can you make Anne a panelist too? Lauren? Thank you.
Yes.
So Anne is with the supervisor's office. Right, any other thoughts on pedestrian issues? All right, then let's move on to bicycle facilities. All right, bicycle facilities come in a variety of sizes and shapes. So unlike pedestrian facilities, which are mostly sidewalks and crosswalks, bicycles have we have a pretty big toolbox to choose from when it comes to bicycle planning. So the most basic facility, which is on street, is a shared street. So shared streets are usually or ideally quiet neighborhood streets or neighborhood greenways that have very low traffic on it, low speeds, preferably no markings, no yellow center line, so that the cars would actually go in the middle of the road and leave some space for cyclists and pedestrians on the side. So we have a lot of these facilities in Fairfax County, a lot of quiet neighborhoods, and often they're cul-de-sacs that are connected by a trail at the end of it. So they make really great bike routes and shortcuts that often benefit from some wayfinding signage. On the right here, we have also a shared street, but it's already slightly less comfortable. So it's for more experienced users. Though it's a low speed limit, it probably has more cars on it since it's more of a through road. But what we can do here, since there's not enough space for bike lanes and the bikes and the cars will need to share the lane, we can add these markings called sharrows or shared lane markings that alert drivers to look out for cyclists in the lane and alerts cyclists to where the preferred position is in the lane. So since the lane is too narrow to share side by side between a car and a bike, bikes are encouraged to shift a little bit towards the middle of the lane to encourage the driver to give them room when passing. And it is legal in Virginia to pass a cyclist across a double yellow line and then back when it's safe to do so. Then another pretty standard facility in Fairfax County is the bike lane. So those provide cyclists with their own space on the road. It's either a bike lane in one direction or in two directions, depending on how wide the road is. As many of the bike lanes in Fairfax County are added as a retrofit through the repaving program. Then on the right here is a buffered bike lane, which provides a little bit more buffer than just a white stripe. So those are two white stripes, and the buffer or the area in between the two stripes can be between 2 feet and 8 feet. So the wider this buffer, the more separation between cars and the bicyclists, so the more comfortable the bike facility. Then we also have off-street facilities or protected facilities for bikes. So the most common in Fairfax County currently is the so-called shared use path. And you see those along roads, many of our busier roads, but they're also going through our many beautiful parks and our very popular facilities. But we're also starting to look at shared use path in a more urban environment. So this is not in Fairfax County, but we are planning a similar urban shared use path in Tysons, as well as in downtown McLean. Once we start updating more of the master plans for other activity centers, we would look at these type of facilities as well. Then a facility that is new to Fairfax County. Sorry, could you, someone is not muted, and then we hear that background noise. Thank you. New to Fairfax County is something called the Separated Bikeway, which kind of functions like a shared use path, but it provides a safe space for pedestrians that's separate from cycling. So the pedestrians have their own space and the bikes have their own space. And it can be either in two directions on the same side of the road, just like a shared use path, or it can be in direction of travel on both sides of the street. So that's more similar to a bike lane. And we have, for example, along Route 1, we're currently planning 2 of those on each side because that's a pretty wide corridor. And we are planning a couple of these cycle tracks that are one directional in the Reston area. So those are pilot projects, and we're hoping to, as through this plan, add more in the county. And those are most appropriate in more urban areas with more pedestrians. So where the shared use path would be too crowded to safely share between bicycles that move at higher speeds and pedestrians that move at slower speeds, we can have the separation here. So how do we determine what the best bicycle facility is, since we have so many options? So in essence, we're trying to provide the bike facility that makes most sense for most people, serves the greatest amount of people. So this little comic strip sums it up. So on the left here is, the shared streets and bike lane facilities that we have many of in Fairfax County and focused on in the past. And they do serve cyclists, particularly more experienced. And he's like, I can deal with this. This is not that bad. But then there are many other people that are interested in biking, but they just don't feel comfortable using that facility that's provided. So if you provide a more protected facility, that's a bit wider, and there's no, threat to, getting hurt or, in the sense falling off or, being too close to cars, it really attracts a lot more people, including children. So we call those all ages and abilities facilities. And they still serve the cyclist that was here in the beginning and was fine using the facilities that we have on the street. But now we're actually serving a lot more people that are interested in biking. So to look at what really, where's the difference between those different type of cyclists. So when we look at the very experienced one, it's really just a small part of the population. We have a category that's called somewhat confident. So those are cyclists that are not necessarily super confident, that do want their separation, their own bike lanes, particularly in urban areas where the traffic doesn't go that fast. You can find those experienced cyclists, but they're not necessarily, out there all the time for recreational purposes. Often they're commuters trying to get to school or to work or to the metro. But then we have this big chunk of the population, which is called the interested but concerned, more than half that really need that separation in order to feel comfortable to bike. So that's where the shared use path and the cycle tracks are so important to get this group to actually try to commute or bike to the car to the park. Maybe not take the car, bike with the family, bike for fun, bike to relax. So we get a much bigger bang for our buck if we invest in these type of facilities. So now I would like to hear what your thoughts are about biking in Fairfax County or riding a scooter or other small micromobility vehicle. or if you have any questions about any of these facilities that we now have access to. So if you would like to speak, please raise your hand. If you're calling in, press *3 to raise your hand, or you can use the chat as well.
Thanks, Nicole. I'm going to unmute Kevin.
Hi, could you bring up the Shero slide again, Nicole?
There you go.
Thank you. You said something I thought I heard you say about going to the middle of the yellow lines if you're biking on the road? Or was that for a vehicle that could cross the yellow lines if you did need to pass a bicyclist?
Yes, so cyclists on pretty narrow roads are supposed to ride in the center of the lane, not too close to the right, because then a car would try to squeeze by at an unsafe distance. So if they take the lane, the driver that wants to pass will need to cross a double yellow line when it's safe to do so, and then merge back over at a greater distance. So, and that's now legal in Virginia.
I did not know that. So if you have heavy traffic oncoming traffic, then the vehicle would essentially be stuck behind the bicyclist, right?
That's correct.
And do we keep any accident data by shared lanes? And also, when you get to the end of a marked bicycle lane, but it's not grade separated, but where it goes to the dotted line, do we have any accident data for people that have to make the right turn, or exactly who is supposed to yield at that point when the vehicle has to make the right turn, therefore getting over to the right side of the road where the bicyclist is?
Sure. So we are collecting bicycle crash data and analyzing them to see patterns. There are very few bicycle crashes in the county, so it's a little bit difficult to see trends. You need a certain amount of data volume in order to make conclusions. So we have not seen any data that would point towards these being a reason for more crashes on the road. Usually those are very experienced cyclists that feel comfortable riding on these type of roads and sharing with traffic. On your question on the dotted bike lane, when it comes to an intersection and the solid line turns into a dashed line, that's supposed to be a merge zone where the car and the bikes share the lane in order for the car to turn right. Because if the car would stay in the lane and the cyclist would stay in the lane, there would be the right hook conflict. So in order to avoid that, they're supposed to kind of be, behind each other in order to make that safe turn.
So if they both approaching to make coming to the intersection at the same time, I guess, so if the bicyclist is behind the vehicle, he should yield to the vehicle making the right turn. And okay.
And the other way around. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think your one of your last graphs there showing the percentage that are hesitant to be out biking on the street was very, very informative. And that almost, just looking at those where you see it's 51, 56%. I mean, do you ever feel like, well, maybe, putting in less than a grade separated or completely separated lane is maybe not the best use of the funds, and that is the plan 10, 20 years down the road to try and upgrade all of the shared lane, the auto and bike shared lanes to, a separated bike lane?
Thank you. That's a really great question. In short, that's the goal, to provide a network that's comfortable for all ages and abilities. We know this is a big county, and there are many needs. They're missing sidewalks and gaps in the trail network fortunately, we already have a trail network that really provides a lot of connectivity already, but it will, of course, require more connections. And then there are areas in the county that are not as well served by trails than others, or these protected bike lanes. So this will be a goal going forward, but depending on funding availability, it depends on how long, this will take. So we can't really give a timeline, but the goal is to, when we build a bike facility, that it's one that can be used by everyone. So we will continue to retrofit roads through the paving cycle with bike lanes, because there are other benefits. So it serves comfortable cyclists that are using that route, but it also has a traffic calming effect, and it actually makes the road safer for pedestrians to cross. So there are benefits to this, what we would call an interim facility. But moving forward in future funding cycles, we would focus more on building these separate facilities than bike lanes.
Okay, thank you very much. I see Chris is on here tonight. I don't wonder if he was going to weigh in at some point on any pedestrian interactions or.
So Chris will answer specific questions. If,
yeah, what was the question?
Weighing in at some point on your, pedestrian interactions with either bikes or autos or anything on this topic from your perspective.
So Kevin, this is Tom. Chris is here as part of the team, and we certainly are available to answer questions. But what we really want to hear the most from today is from the attendees about their perspective about biking and walking. And Chris is certainly part of the team and very engaged in preparing the ActiveFairfax plan, and will continue to be. So please be aware that he's, his leadership and guidance are, a very important part of the process. But tonight we're really want to hear from the participants primarily tonight.
Yeah. Oh, there we go. Okay, thanks, Tom, for that. I didn't want to put him on the spot, but I just I know, obviously known Chris for a while, and he's got a lot of experience on it. But I appreciate what you said, and I'll let others share their thoughts now.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Sean next.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Sean Newman. I am a board member with Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling, and also a member of the Trails, Sidewalks, and Bicycles Committee. And so I'm speaking more on my own personal behalf tonight, as far as the bike lanes that the county has put in. And I know that those are, billed as being a benefit to the more secure cyclists. But as somebody who considers myself to be a very confident cyclist, even in many of the locations where those have been installed, I find that I don't use them, largely because they are either in the door zone, or they are so they don't leave enough room between me and the vehicles next to me. And so cars see paint on the road, bikes in the bike lane, and they say, great, I can go normally. And they don't feel like they need to give 3 feet anymore. They feel there's a bike lane, I can just stay in my lane, I'm good. And I find it to be significantly scarier sometimes to be in the bike lane than to be, a couple more feet over to the left in the main travel lane, where I know that people will actually give me space because they have to get around me. Every time that I have had a close call in this county, it's always been because I am too far over to the right, and I am leaving the cars with what they think is enough space to pass me in the lane. I have plenty more comments as well, but I'll stop there for now.
Thank you for sharing that concern, Sean. And please go ahead if you have additional thoughts.
Sure. So another big thing that I will say is, so we're installing bike lanes in many places, and I mentioned this at the paving meetings as well. And we're doing this with an effort to slow the speeds, but we're not able to reduce the speeds at the same time, because those require a speed study and are controlled by VDOT. And so it really limits the effect that you can actually have with an attempt to calm traffic using those efforts. So that to me is a, the fact that we don't have that capability to actually make what I think would be a more meaningful change. The example that I'm thinking of is in Springfield District, but which is Lee Chapel Road, where the goal is to slow it down. You're putting in bike lanes to slow it down, but you can't actually reduce the speed at the same time. I find that many of the roads in the area are far too fast to bike or to feel comfortable cycling, and are unnecessarily fast as well. Some of them have intersections along the way to slow it down, but many of them, there will be a 40-mile-an-hour speed limit in a very heavily congested zone with lots of shocks and people crossing the road and people trying to get around and go to different places in their day. And whether it's a cyclist or a pedestrian, they have to get across, 4, 5, 6, 7 lanes of traffic going 40 miles an hour, and it's really hard. Another big aspect is intersections. So there are several intersections within the touch Braddock district that I can think of right now. There's a couple that come to mind where, in order to cross from one side of the road to the other, you have to wait through 3 lights worth of traffic, because you have to cross all 3 different legs of the intersection. The specific one I'm thinking of is Rolling Road at Southampton, where in order to cross from the southeastern corner of the intersection to the southwestern corner of the intersection, you have to go north, wait for a light, west, wait for a light, south. And it can take, 7, 8 minutes just to cross the road there, which is going to push people to do it illegally or, cross outside of the intersection and put people in danger, because having to wait up, close to 10 minutes to cross the street is ridiculous and really prioritizes cars in a way that doesn't make sense for the average resident of the county.
Thank you for sharing that concern and your experience, Sean. I think we have one more raised hand.
Yes, we have a call in from 703-323.
Thank you. This is Ann Sharp. Something is not working with my video as far as muting and unmuting, so I decided to call in, and so I'm watching and listening. I know, it's crazy when you have your home computer. Anyway, thank you very much for taking my call. I had intended to make a comment as a concerned citizen about the walking trails, and that's why I raised my hand earlier. And my concern, now that I've been out and about more in the last several months, is that we have a lot of good trails. My concern is that some of them are in not very good shape. And so my question has to do with the maintenance of some of the trails that we already have. How do we approach that as part of this experience?
Thank you, Anne, for calling in today. And I'm sorry, I forgot for a second that you're retired from your previous position with the supervisor's office. So thank you for calling in as an interested citizen and for sharing your concerns about the condition of some of the trails. So the plan will look into, what type of recommendations would make sense in Fairfax County. This is a big county. We have over 500 miles of trails. So there's no, quick and easy solution to keeping them, maintained and up to date. But there's definitely, some things that can be improved. So we heard from the community through this process, for example, that it's confusing who even the responsible agency is in Fairfax County for a certain trail segment or sidewalk that needs repair. So the county has a website that shows, or like an interactive map that you can zoom into, and it shows segment by segment if it's maintained by the county or if it's maintained by the state, or if it's in a park, which would be yet another entity to maintain the trail, or if it's on private land. So it's definitely, we could make it easier to find out who maintains what system, and then it's usually a complaint-based approach to maintenance. There's some limited funding available to maintain some of these trails and repave them every year, particularly for the county side. But it's found not enough to really keep our entire system in shape. So there's definitely some improvements that we can make. And I wonder if Tom would like to speak to the maintenance issue.
I was just gonna add
Chris.
real quick. This is Chris, to both Ann's comments and Sean's comments. Keep them coming. This is an open dialogue. The purpose of this meeting is a little different than some of our other meetings. So if you're asking a question, and I'm sorry, Kevin, I didn't catch that you were asking a question. If you're asking a question, we're going to try and answer it, but we're certainly not trying to argue or defend the status quo. This is an effort to garner public input as to what your perception is of walking and biking today. And in a few minutes, we'll ask you what your vision is for the future. And so a recurring theme that we have heard is the lack of maintenance. So that's certainly something for us to document as to what we're doing. And also to Sean's comments about the 4 crosswalks, that's something that staff is working on. But again, it's something we're looking to move forward as a policy in the county. And there was also an interesting comment about how the bike lanes make you feel less safe. So this is exactly the kind of input and feedback that we're looking for tonight. And so there's a fine line for us as staff to try to answer some questions and explain a little bit of information, but we're not at all trying to be argumentative. This is exactly the type of input we're looking for in this process.
Thanks, Chris.
We have a comment in the chat, a few comments in the chat, actually. Oh, it sounds like Sean has another comment, so I'll go back to him in just a moment. He says he agrees finding out who is responsible for maintenance is really hard. And I'm gonna, maybe he doesn't. Sean, if you want to talk again, go ahead and raise your hand and I can unmute you.
Hey, so thank you again for unmuting me. So a couple things. One, as far as the, finding out who is responsible for maintenance, I consider myself to be a very knowledgeable road user, and I have a really hard time figuring out who does it. Usually you'll get to the right place if you keep submitting it to every agency you can think of, but that's can be really challenging. And if there was a centralized location for, all of Fairfax County to triage that and send it out to the right places, I think it'd be very helpful. The other reason that I raised my hand again was that, so I am a large white man. I don't generally feel uncomfortable or unsafe running on trails when it's in the dusk, or even biking at night. I feel very confident with that. However, I have heard from many, especially our female residents, that, oh, I would never run that area at night, even if it's like the Parkway Trail along Fairfax County Parkway, you know, in places where it's lit or in places where there is, you know, that are built well for pedestrians. And many trails, especially the park trails, are secluded, they are distant, and I don't know that I have a solution, but I know that the issue has been raised that some people don't feel safe on those trails, and I don't know if that's education or some sort of, you know, trail ranger program or, you know, call boxes or I don't know what, you know, occasional lighting. But the fact that people are scared to walk in the county is probably not just related to this county, but it is a concern.
Thank you, Sean. That's a really good point. Thanks for bringing that up.
I'm going to go ahead and take it to Josh.
Hey, thanks for taking me. I just had a comment that kind of goes back to a couple of the other issues that were mentioned regarding maintenance and also when you were showing the slides with the different types of paths and different buffers between, you know, pedestrians in the road or bicyclists in the road. And for me, one thing that I notice a lot when I'm out and about in the district here is that the sidewalks and the paths don't seem to get the same treatment or attention when it comes to clearing debris, right? So car accident happens on the road, police may show up, tow truck driver shows up, they may just take the bumper that's laying in the road and throw it onto the sidewalk or onto the bicycle path. Or when snow is plowed, they plow it into the bike lane or they plow it into the sidewalk, right? There's several sidewalks I could send pictures in where I could go out today and the sidewalk's covered in 2 inches of gravel, making it impossible for a wheelchair to wheel through. Or out here on Burke Lake Road right now, there's 2 inches of mud, making it impossible for someone who would be on a scooter or a wheelchair to get through without some additional efforts or additional assistance. So just keep in mind that, you know, when you're showing these designs that, you know, the buffering may also, or, you know, a wall or however you want to design these things to where they are a little more protected from debris that are coming off the road or debris that are coming from other places, would probably be useful from a safety standpoint and from a use standpoint. Thank you.
Thank you, Josh. That's a really great observation. And we have noticed that trails that are either curb abutted, so like right next to the curb, or just with a small grass strip in between, tend to collect more debris than the trails and sidewalks that are further away for exactly that reason. It's the snow and whatever gets pushed from the road. So in addition to having that comfort buffer of just not being so close to traffic, it has that added benefit of kind of catching some of that debris. I just want to mention to everyone here that VDOT has a great website to report some of those issues, and it's really important that they hear about these issues. And many of the, especially the sidewalks, but also some of the trails are maintained by VDOT, and they have a website that can, you know, you can even upload photos to make them aware of some of those conditions, and they're fairly responsive, or let the county know if it's our trail. So Lauren, if you could place the link in the chat, I think that would be helpful to share.
Yes, I will do that in just a moment. I have a chat comment from Anne. Having worked with FCDOT and VDOT, I also realize how hard it is to figure out who is responsible for maintenance. I just wanted to share my concern about maintaining existing trails. And I have a question from Sean. How many attendees are here tonight? And an answer, which I have 7, and except I have Sean twice, so that would make 6. And then another from Sean, with the exception of park trails, I usually submit sidewalk issues to VDOT first. And I will go ahead and share that link in the chat in a moment. I have a hand up from Anne on the phone again. I'll unmute you now.
No, I'm sorry, it just doesn't want to go away.
Okay, gotcha. All right, well then I have another hand up from Kevin.
I am back. By the way, I don't know if the attendees were allowed to do video tonight, but I couldn't find it anywhere where you could unlock the video. But a couple of comments. As far as jurisdiction, yeah, if it's not readily obvious that it's VDOT, where you can either use the web link you're going to put up or the 800 number. I don't know if the supervisor will appreciate this, but I think you can always call the supervisor's office and they will, you know, they can tell you which agency is handling it. Another comment I wanted to make is due to my grandchildren's sports activities, I'm spending a lot of time in Arlington on the weekends. And I'm sure you're probably familiar with, in the middle of the crosswalk, I don't know what the technical name of it is, but they have that stand-up post or sign that says you have to yield to pedestrians in the crosswalk. I imagine that's maybe more suitable at some of the lower speeds that you see in Arlington, but if you could speak to that as to, do we have them in Fairfax County, or is there a standard on when they can be put out, and what plans we have for utilizing that in our crosswalks?
Sure, I can go ahead and answer that. Those are standard MUTCD signs. MUTCD is the governing document for all federal signs that are allowed by the highway transportation departments. They are more appropriate in a lower speed situation. However, in Fairfax County, VDOT controls our roads, and VDOT will not let us use those signs. Their experience has been that they get hit quite often, and that therefore there's extremely high level of maintenance associated with them. So we have been told for the past few years that we can't use those signs. From a capital projects perspective, we've contemplated, could we use them on a raised median, or instead of, as you do see the other jurisdictions do, actually just place them on the asphalt and on the double yellow. If we put them on a pork chop island or a raised median or something like that, they might be less likely to be hit, but we've never advanced that idea yet as a capital project. But thank you for that input, and we'll continue to include alternative signs as part of the recommendations coming out of this plan.
Well, just to follow up on that, Chris, and that was a pretty clear-cut answer. What's the top thing in your toolbox right now for crosswalks? Is it the flashing warning signs on either one? I mean, lower than a hawk signal, because that's a little bit expensive.
Yes, the rectangular rapid flash beacons right now they're still interim approval, so they're not yet in the MUTCD, although we've seen a draft of the upcoming MUTCD, and they are in that. So we expect that they will be federally approved. We're allowed to use them under the interim approval designation. We don't have a program or funding to do them directly in the county. So the ones that you have seen, I can't think of any in Braddock District, but you may have seen the one on Prosperity at the Cross County Trail and some other places. We've done that with some special safety funding with VDOT. Those have been reported to be very effective, both from a pedestrian point of view, but also from a driver point of view. It was actually Supervisor Palchik of the Providence District, who regularly goes through the Prosperity one. She says, as a driver, she feels more empowered to stop and yield now, because the flashing lights help the cars behind her understand why it is that she's stopping and yielding. So from a pedestrian and a bicyclist perspective, people are reporting stopping and yielding as never before. Also, those can be passively activated. That one at Prosperity has an infrared passive activation, and so a bicyclist doesn't have to stop. They can roll up to the crosswalk. It starts to flash. They see a bicyclist doesn't have to dismount. I mean, they sort of have to stop to make sure it's safe, but they don't have to dismount. They can roll up to the crosswalk and see that the vehicles are yielding and the flashing occurs automatically. So the City of Fairfax piloted an infrared trigger like that, and that's the one we have in the county. So they're not a one-size-fits-all solution, though. So there are standards. There are VDOT standards. So if traffic volumes are too low and traffic speeds are too low, by the VDOT standards, it's overkill. It's not necessary, so to speak. Conversely, if traffic volumes, speeds, or the width of the road are too large, they're also not allowed. As roads get larger, such as our typical 4-lane divided highway, we want there to be a pedestrian refuge, a place to wait in the middle, even though the VDOT standards don't require that per se. County staff feels strongly that we want to break that crossing into a two-step crossing where you wait and you have a safe refuge in the median, so that you can be sure that the cars are stopped, because the one downside, if anything, about the rectangular rapid flash beacons is that they don't require the vehicles to stop. It's not a stop controlled situation. So nothing about the laws of Virginia or the laws of physics change when the rapid flash beacons are on. So it's an excellent warning device. We do feel that it's an excellent tool in our toolkit. We get requests for them, maybe not quite weekly, but certainly monthly. And so in the right situation, in the right application, the research is continuing to show that they are an excellent tool in our toolkit.
Chris, I've seen that, and it is, I think it does function well. But I also think the supervisor's comment was spot on, because I mean, you know the term, no good deed goes unpunished. If you're in the vehicle stopping, you're going to have that fear of getting rear-ended if you do have traffic behind you. So I think her comment was right on the mark there. Thank you for that.
Thank you. And this is an excellent discussion. So I hate to cut it short, but we have more slides to go through, but also more time to discuss. But we have one last hand. Anne, I believe.
She just can't unmute herself.
Yeah.
So I think we just have a couple of chats. We have the RFP at the CCT on Prosperity is fantastic from Sean, and also, yes, many more pedestrian refuges, please. So you can go ahead, Nicole. The call-in number that's got the hand raised cannot put their hand down. I mean, you can try, and it's *3. I don't know if that's going to work for it to lower your hand.
Okay,
there,
great.
It worked.
All right, perfect. All right, let's move on to hiking, mountain biking, and equestrian facilities. And those are quite plentiful in Fairfax County. They're very popular across our population. They're usually soft surface trails through our many beautiful parks along stream valleys. They're more narrow than paved trail and have a softer surface. It could be crushed stone or mulch. And that's very similar for hikers and equestrians. And mountain biking facilities and some of our really premier mountain biking parks also have these obstacles for more experienced riders to try out their skills. So as part of this plan, we are going to plan for these type of soft surface facilities. There are already many in our current comprehensive plan, but there are connections missing and other opportunities. So we are looking forward to hearing your thoughts about hiking, mountain biking, or equestrian facilities. Anne has raised her hand. Or is that the one that's can't come down? Did you
I
hear-
muted her on the phone if she
Yeah.
wants to speak.
Do you have a question or a comment, Anne?
I'm gonna go ahead and mute her because it sounds like no, and I don't have any other raised. Oh, here, Sean.
Oh, Sean. Mhm.
Hey, good evening again. So I guess my question is, I've done some mountain biking, largely on Fairfax County Park property. Are there mountain biking trails or, kind of that single track type of trail that is not considered part of park property, or it seems like it's all mostly that?
Yeah, so most of our hiking and mountain biking facilities are on either county parkland or Nova parks. I'm not sure if the federal parks have mountain biking facilities, but they're usually in parkland, and many are well used and also maintained by, sometimes even built by mountain bike groups. Moore is one of our mountain biking clubs that builds trails and maintains trails. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I know they maintain the the Wakefield Trail system and the Acton Trail system as well.
Yeah, so there could be, it's possible to have them along roads, and I know hiking trails sometimes go along roads. I'm not sure about mountain biking facilities per se. I know of other communities that are actually using a mountain bike trail system as a safe routes to school, or other more transportation oriented system. So because it's it does serve it doesn't serve mobility impaired populations, but it does it's separated from cars often, and it can have a transportation function as well, and it's of course much cheaper, if not free, to build and maintain.
So I guess the other part of my question is, is there currently a network that is, so most of the trails that I can think of are purely recreational, that like you would be hard pressed to actually get anywhere using the mountain biking trails for the most part within Fairfax County that I'm aware of, other than the cross county trail where it kind of becomes less paved. Is there a thought to, I guess, incorporate that network more to help get places?
We certainly have this opportunity as at least as an interim facility. We know in the VDOT right away to have an official facility, it needs to meet ADA, so it needs to serve all users of all abilities, including people in wheelchairs. But there could be opportunities as, for example, cut-throughs between neighborhoods as a more natural facility. We know of pathways between a neighborhood and a school, for example. So there could be these smaller connectivity opportunities that could be interim or permanent. So that's definitely something to consider. And if I look at our current interactive map as part of this outreach, where the community can add facilities that they would like to see in the neighborhoods. Many of these are actually natural surface trails. So I think the appetite for this type of facility is really growing through the pandemic, to be out in nature and have that natural experience. But of course, we always have to kind of, consider the needs of all users, and but serve both needs depending on the context. So it's definitely an opportunity.
Yeah, and let me just add, Nicole, and it answers Josh's question in the chat. Traditionally, we're the Department of Transportation, so traditionally we've been focused on facilities that function as transportation facilities, which traditionally means paved facilities. However, in the past few years, as we've worked with the community, we've learned that the hiking trail network, the unpaved trail network, serves as a feeder a feeder facility. So it's similar to our United States highway system, where we have interstates and highways and local roads. In the pedestrian world, those hiking trails are the local roads, and then our paved trails are the highways and the interstates of active transportation. So there's that aspect. So that really does make those hiking trails part of the transportation network. Because if you can't get to our paved facility, you're going to be on a natural surface facility. However, in this outreach, we've also heard community feedback, and it's probably been driven home by the pandemic, that we are a community, a county of just so many parks and so many natural facilities. And of course, we're all familiar with the big parks, the Burke Lakes or the rec centers, but throughout the entire county, there are these little small neighborhood parks that are natural areas or semi-natural areas. And so the ability for people to get out, go for a walk, connect with nature in this park property that we have done an incredible job of preserving in this county has been something we've already heard in this process as something we need to strive to improve, that there needs to be access to parks. So certainly from a Department of Transportation perspective, we've evolved our thinking towards how these natural surface trails function and how important they are to the community. But as Nicole said, when we go to build things, and when we go to build things with money, local or federal, there's really a need for us to make those available for the greatest number of users. And so that federal money requires that it's paved and ADA, but the local funding also sort of necessitates that we open things up to the most number of users. But again, I've certainly learned a lot in the past few years about how important these local feeder networks of natural trails are.
Thanks, Chris. We have 2 comments in the chat.
Yes, I can read them. From Josh, maybe I'm the minority, but I enjoy soft surface, non-paved trails, not just for mountain biking, but hiking, running, and walking. Over the years, I've seen many of my favorite trails get paved. Can you comment on how a trail is selected for paving versus when a trail is chosen to stay natural?
So that's a great question. This is specifically for a trail in a park, because there is really a choice in the park system if a trail would stay natural or it would get paved. So that decision is made by the park authority or Nova Parks or the National Park Service, depending on who owns the park. And we can work with those landowners as part of this plan to determine what makes most sense from also their perspective. They know their constituency, their park users, who prefer their park in a certain way, which trail could potentially be paved and which one should be preserved as a natural facility, or if there's the opportunity to provide both, have a paved trail and a parallel hiking mountain biking trail to give that experience. Sometimes the trails are paved for maintenance reasons. So we had some issues with trails washing out frequently, and that was in the long term not sustainable to maintain. So in that instance, that trail was paved or made out of concrete in order to be preserved. But often we do have that choice, and we will work with those park entities on determining at least the regional routes, so not the small loop trails within the park. The parks have their own comprehensive planning process that you can all get involved in to work with them on that. But we're looking at the trails that go through parks, that go somewhere, and we will have that discussion as part of this planning effort. And then Sean
Great, and we
had
have one
a
more comment. Oh, a couple more. The CCT, for example, is a major transportation thoroughfare that better meets the needs of more users as a paved trail. That's from Sean. And also, I forgot to mention this during the bicycle session, but when a bike lane ends, there always needs to be a bike may use full lane sign in addition to the bike lane ends sign.
Thank you for sharing that. And just quickly on that last point, is the VDOT has a specific set of requirements to use a bikes may use full lane sign, so it cannot be used on every road. So there's a certain warrant for it that needs to be met in order to have that sign. I didn't speak to it earlier, but it's would be used in the pretty much the same situation as that shared lane marking or Shero that we talked about earlier. Is there any more comments in the chat, Lauren?
That's all we have for now.
Okay, great. Let's move on since we're running short on time. I want to make sure we hear your vision as well. But quickly on complete streets. So complete streets are, at least as a concept, somewhat new to our toolbox. We have used complete streets enhancements, which are usually, street trees, street lighting, street furniture in our urban areas through our activity center, special area planning processes that are done by the Department of Planning, Development and Planning. But outside those activity centers, we don't have them those type of facilities in the comprehensive plan. So this project will take a look at these type of enhancement for very specific areas, particularly, for example, the surrounding streets that lead to an activity center just outside the activity center boundaries to allow neighborhood residents in those neighborhoods to comfortably reach those destinations. So to show you what the difference is between a road that has a complete streets enhancement and one that doesn't, the images below is the same street. You can see the yellow truck in both images, but one road is mostly a road with bike lanes. Pedestrians are using those bike lanes to walk. There are a few trees, but they don't really provide that much shade. It feels a little bit open to the pedestrian. So for the cars, they probably drive at higher speeds because it looks like a pretty open corridor for them to go down. However, on the right here, it's a very different type of setting. It looks a little bit more urban because it has, these trees. It looks a little bit more enclosed, and that provides comfort for pedestrians and cyclists on their facilities. But it also helps set more, a different type of visual cue for drivers to, slow down and look out for other users that are to be expected in the road. So you have sometimes that experience when you drive along the corridor and enter, one of our towns and cities that have done, or our activity centers that have the street trees, that it's a very different feel along the road, and we call those complete streets enhancements. So let's look at the actual project. Now that we have learned about and discussed those different type of facilities and the experience that you have in Fairfax County today, and let's look at what has led to these experiences and what has been in the plan so far. So Fairfax County does have active transportation plans, several. They're titled Countywide Trails Plan, which is on the lower left here, which focuses on the off-street shared use path system and hiking trail system. It's from the 1970s, so it has been around for a long time, and one of the main reasons why we have so many trails in Fairfax County. It was last updated in 2018, but it is, it's very current in a sense, not that because it was recently updated, because it was just a small update, but it's really reflecting an approach to providing a comprehensive regional but also local network of these separated trail facilities, which was very forward-looking in the 1970s, and it's still current today. So it's a great plan to have. This project will update this plan and bring it to current standards, and hopefully, make those little connections that are have become necessary since it was last updated. New land uses like new parks and schools that were in around 20, 30 years ago that we would like to connect to, as well as new neighborhoods that have popped up that would like to be connected to the network. So then we also have the bicycle master plan, which focuses on mostly on-road facilities like bike lanes and the sharrows and the shared streets. It does have a few trails on their shared use path that are significant for commuting, particularly. That trail was adopted in 2014, so it's fairly current. But then it doesn't have quite the focus of the all ages and abilities, which is a more recent policy or best practice in the United States. So it was back in the day in 2014, it was the best practice to have all the cyclists on the road, unless there was a shortcut through a park or connecting to cul-de-sacs. And then we have activity center plans, which focus on our commercial areas, such as Tyson's and Reston's and Annandale and Huntington. So all those areas that have some commercial activities have their own plans, and they show these cross sections for the roads in those centers, and those include active transportation facilities as well. So different type of bike facilities and sidewalk widths. So part of this plan is to map all these different recommendations into one map, so we can see how those overlay. So since all these plans have different ages that were developed at different times, we have to bring them all together to make sure that they talk to each other and that there's just one place, or in the sense of the activity centers, that we have the regional network map as well as the activity center cross sections that talk to each other and all show the same facility. And we also have a regional trail network plan, which is fairly new. It's not part of the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan yet. It's more of a regional vision that's led by the Capital Trails Coalition, whose members are jurisdictions in this area, as well as landholders like the National Park Service. And this coalition is imagining this very well-connected shared use path network throughout the entire region. So it's a really bold vision that's very exciting. You can see in Fairfax County how many of the trails are already built that are part of the current designated network. The built trails are in green. The funded trails that are under development or to be built shortly are in orange, with the one exception of this east-west county trail, which is not funded in its entirety, but it was significant enough to include it in this network. And as part of this effort, the ActiveFairfax Transportation Plan effort, we want to formalize the regional network that's part of this effort in our comprehensive plan and expand it. So you can see there's some holes in the network that we would like to close in order to have that connectivity to our neighbors. So I spoke already about the inconsistencies between the Bike Master Plan, Contract Trails Plan area plans, having the different, the different processes that develop the plans at different ages. So bringing these plans together into one to have the same recommendation for every spot in the county, and also a recommendation that's up to date. So we mentioned the focus on bike lanes and the bike plan, but now the need to bring the bike facilities off street to serve more users. So make sure that the facilities we're planning in the future are actually serving all ages and abilities and meet national standards and best practices. But also we have not provided too much pedestrian-specific recommendations in the trails plan or the bike plan. There's some recommendation in the area plans that we can pull from, but we want to formalize them as part of this effort into a set of recommendations to that specifically focus on pedestrians and particularly crosswalk improvements. And then with a specific focus on safety. So we have all these different safety measures in our toolbox, but also we don't want to just look at where are the current crashes, where do we need to enhance the safety, but have a forward-looking corridor vision. So look at the entire corridor, not this one spot. How can we make it safer for all road users? Using, if you're familiar with the term Vision Zero approach, a systematic approach to improving road safety in Fairfax County. So the project is broken into currently into 2 phases, and maybe a need to break into 3 phases, but we're currently in phase 1. So at the end of phase 1, we started in July 2020 and have been looking at what's the current policy and what are the current plans that relate to active transportation, both on the local level, the regional level, and the state level. We have analyzed our existing conditions and not just the facilities, but also demographics. So we can do some data analysis and look at safety crash data, as well as big data, cell phone data of where our current bicycle and pedestrian users are in the county, and overlay that and create really interesting maps of pockets of demand for active transportation, where is it highest, but also looking at equity data, where it's our greatest need for active transportation facilities. And all of this will culminate into a vision, goals, and objective statement that we're currently working on, that this public outreach and the information you shared with us today and the information we're receiving throughout this community engagement process will culminate in this vision, goals, and objective statement that will be a result of phase 1, but the ground zone, or the pretty much the jumping board up to phase 2, where we're focusing on recommendations and building the network and the type of facilities. Another conclusion of phase 1 is the strategic safety program plan, which would be more of an internal working plan for the county. And both of those, both the vision, goals, and objectives and strategic safety program plan will be shown to the public before it's finalized. So you have an opportunity to read it and comment and share your thoughts on how we can improve that part of the plan. Then again, in phase 2, this is really where we focus on the recommendations, planning for the future, using the information we gathered from the public and from our analysis. So please share your thoughts on what is your vision for active travel in Fairfax County. What would you like to see in the future as a goal or an objective as part of this planning effort? So again, please raise your hand if you would like to speak, or place your answer in the chat.
I'll go to Kevin first.
I just wanted to note that anybody listening tonight who was a fan of the segment on complete streets, that you have quite the advocate in the Deputy County Executive, Rachel Flynn, that oversees transportation. She's been very generous with her time at the Transportation Advisory Commission that I serve on, and has talked about this extensively. So I think that has a good future in Fairfax County.
Thank you for sharing that, Kevin. Yes, Rachel Flynn is a great proponent of complete streets.
Indeed. Thank you.
We have a couple more raised hands.
Yes, I'll take it to Bob.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for the presentation, Nicole. As you know, the committee has talked about this plan for some time now, and I would just want to condense my vision into 3 words: connectivity, accessibility, and safety, all of which, of course, are comprised in what the plan is working toward. But I think those 3 things would, from the top-down level, would say what my vision would be. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
And now to Sean.
Again. Hello again. So I guess as far as a vision for the county, I understand that it is very, resource intensive to change the streets that we currently have when you're actually, pouring asphalt and digging up and whatever else we need to do to get the, capital projects done. That said, the strategic plan process that was happening last year, really kind of drove home the amount that people want to see, a more connected Fairfax, a safer Fairfax that is walkable and bikeable. And I think as part of this process that we really need to, keep that in mind for as the county continues to develop, as the county moves forward. And, one of the biggest things, and I brought it up earlier, and, Chris, I believe, brought it up as well, that, VDOT controls our roads. And at least as of right now, VDOT will not slow down roads. VDOT will not make many of these changes without a significant amount of, I don't want to use the term over-engineering, but, to a certain extent it's true. And so I feel like we need to really, focus on the easier answers in the short term. The letter from the Trails, Sidewalks, and Bikeways Committee really did a great job with this, of identifying, simple, relatively easy to implement solutions that don't cost a lot of money, that don't make a lot of, negative impacts on the county, and that would help make it safer and more convenient and more comfortable and more fun to walk and bike around the county. So I really feel like there needs to be a lot of focus on ensuring that we have that ability to get around comfortably. The Complete Streets image is wonderful, but that is a many years in the making vision that isn't going to happen overnight, but won't happen if we don't start now. So thank you, and I definitely appreciate all of your time tonight and the effort you all have put into this as well.
Thank you so much for sharing, Sean. Bob, did you have another question, or did you not take your hand down after you did? So be unmuted here if you have another comment.
I didn't have my hand up again.
Okay, no worries.
That's all I've got, Nicole.
Okay, great. I know it's starting to get a little bit late, so let's go through my final slides here. So I just want to let you know the other ways you can be engaged. So thank you for joining the discussion today. Please, if you haven't done so, we would really appreciate if you could also fill out the community survey, which is available on the ActiveFairfax program page at fairfaxcounty.gov/transportation/bike/walk/ActiveFairfax, or just search for ActiveFairfax on the website. That's always the easiest way to find it. It takes about 14 minutes to fill out. It's available in 8 languages, so please share with your friends and family as well. We have over 1,000 responses, but we would like to hear even more. The survey is open until May 15th. And we also have on our website a interactive map that allows you to identify the destinations you would like to get to, but also the barriers to active transportation or barriers to accessing transit. So you can zoom into your neighborhood and then click where the issue is, and leave a comment, a brief description of the issue. You can even upload a picture. If somebody else has already identified the issue, you can like or vote for that answer and say, I agree. So there are a couple of issues that have 10 people that like that one. So it's interesting for us to see where really the glaring issues are in the community that attract a lot of attention, that a lot of people have noticed before. So that's one way to share your hyper-local knowledge. It's a big county, so we really rely on this crowdsourcing effort to inform the county to where the access issues are for active transportation. Then we have a second map, which is basically a vision of the network, the active transportation network. So it currently shows the 2014 Bicycle Master Plan network, as well as a countywide trails plan network overlaid with each other. So you can zoom in and see where are the planned trails, where are the planned bikeways. But then also you can add to that. So if you see there's nothing even planned for this connectivity you would like to see, you can draw in either a shared use path or a bikeway or a complete street or a hiking trail. So you have the different options. You can draw it in. Again, you can have a description of the issue or the thing you would like to add, and then you can like it if somebody else has already added it. And then the next steps for this effort are to finish up public engagement, which is open until May 15th, take that information we're getting and develop these vision and goals reflecting the key outcomes for active transportation in Fairfax County, and then develop this draft vision that will go to back to the public for review before it is passed on to the Board of Supervisors for review and approval this summer, which will conclude phase 1. So this is the end of the formal presentation. So you can visit our website. Here is the link at the top, or you can reach out to us via email at ActiveFairfax@fairfaxcounty.gov, or you can reach us by mail at Fairfax County Department of Transportation, attention to the Active Transportation Program, 4050 Legato Road in Fairfax. So if you would like to share any final thoughts, or if you have any other questions, we have a few more minutes to discuss.
I'm gonna unmute Sean.
Hello again. So I had one question and one comment. So the comment is, there are a few places in the county where there is great and very tiny connectivity through, cul-de-sacs, through a small trail or whatever at the end of a cul-de-sac. And where that happens, like there's one heading over to Harley Parkway right across from Rolling Hill Swim Club that allows connectivity through that neighborhood and is fantastic. It's maybe 50 feet of concrete. I would encourage the county to, if there's any way to ensure that anytime a new cul-de-sac is built, that it should include that, I think would be a absolutely vital part of the connectivity for this plan. And, as a kind of side part of that, in places where there is an existing cul-de-sac without a connectivity like that, is there any way for the county, or I would love for there to be a way for the county to, be able to buy that up and be able to put in the connectivity after the fact, understanding that, it's challenging to have to do the right-of-way acquisition for that type of work.
Thank you.
And then, sorry, go on.
Please finish your thought.
Sure. The other question that I had is so there have been, I know I personally have submitted many road issues, bike issues, et cetera, over the years through either the Fairfax DOT site or through the VDOT site. Are any of those being included in the interactive map? And is there going to be a way to, incorporate future ideas into the interactive map after May 15th?
So ideally, if you have ever submitted anything to the county, please add it to the map. So we have some documents that we have passed on to the consultants, but I can't guarantee that we have them from many years ago. So if there's something that's really important to you that you would like to see added as a plan, please go ahead and add it. So also your neighbors can see it, or anyone else that may be interested in this type of connection. So that would be really helpful. I know the Fairfax Alliance for Better Bicycling has presented us with documentation recently that is of course included, but please share something that you have shared previously to make sure we don't miss it. So that's really important information to have. Thank you.
Bob, do you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, I think I don't have anything at this time.
Okay, great, thanks. Nicole, I don't see any other raised hands.
Great. Well, thank you so much for attending tonight. This was really a lot of feedback that was shared. So thank you for all your input. Again, please take the time to fill out the survey and look at the maps and see if there's anything you can add if you get a chance before May 15th. And Sean, your second question was, is there a chance to add something to the map after the 15th? So the map will be taken down on the 15th, but please feel free to reach out via email with any additional ideas for us to consider throughout this process. And this is just the first round of engagement. There will be more rounds of engagement, particularly in regards to the network. Once we have a draft network that will be shared with the public, and that's another good time to add something or comment on planned facilities for the future. So, Supervisor, would you like to say some parting words?
Just thank you, Nicole, and thanks to our participants tonight. I think we got some great feedback, and I think Sean and Bob and Kevin really highlighted the challenge that we have, and taking a place that was really so much of Fairfax County designed in an era where we designed and engineered things for the automobile only, and now we're on a long road, for lack of a better term, to change that and make a community that's designed for people rather than just the automobile. And tonight was a small step in that direction. So thanks everyone for participating.
Thank you, Supervisor Walkinshaw. All right, that concludes the meeting for today. Thanks again for your participation, and have a good night.